One wrong move and this Israeli F-15 goes down, and the only thing stopping that from happening is this. At 02:13 hours local time, two pairs of F-15I Ra'am multi-role fighters take off from Hatzerim Air Base in southern Israel, blacked out and under total radio silence. Skimming at 150 feet above the Red Sea, the formation drops into a radar shadow zone just west of Eilat, masking their departure under natural topography and known surveillance gaps. 5 minutes in, they bank westward, just north of Tiran Island, and push south along Egypt's eastern coast. Inside the cockpits, oxygen feeds kick in as the aircraft push into low-pressure altitude zones. Every system not critical to flight or counter-detection remains powered down. As they make their way into the Red Sea, the lead pilot keeps his eyes locked ahead. But his dash helmet projects terrain features, data link markers, and radar convergence zones directly onto the visor. He doesn't glance down once. At 02:27 hours, 270 kilometers south of Sharm el-Sheikh, the lead pilot double taps his throttle. The pair behind him close the formation as all four aircraft drop to just 200 feet to stay below a suspected Sudanese early warning radar. They plan to stay here for the next 420 kilometers. The only indication they are even there is the water their engines are kicking up as they scream south. To the untrained eye, the F-15I looks like a standard Strike Eagle. But what's on board, its weapons, its sensors, its avionics, is deeply Israel. And every one of those upgrades is soon going to be stress tested. The F-15I Ra'am is Israel's long-range strike variant of the F-15, and is optimized for deep penetration missions with minimal support. Visually, its most distinctive feature is the pair of conformal fuel tanks molded along the fuselage. These tanks add over 4,500 pounds of fuel without increasing radar cross-section or aerodynamic drag like drop tanks would. Inside the cockpit, the Ra'am pilot uses the Elbit-4 helmet-mounted display, which projects threat data, terrain contours, and target tracks directly onto the pilot's visor with 40 millisecond refresh intervals. This is critical for terrain-hugging missions like this one, where you can't put your head down for even a second. This integrated helmet, combined with the Ra'am's conformal fuel tanks, allowed the pilots to cover 420 kilometers at ultra-low altitudes without external tanks. Without these features, the aircraft would have required mid-route refueling far earlier, raising the risk of detection and compressing the strike window. The terrain following capability also reduced pilot workload in the most vulnerable phase of flight. However, low-level flight only works if the timing is perfect, and the next link in the chain is 24,000 feet above them. At 02:39 hours with 470 kilometers covered, the Ra'am flight begins a slow climb over international waters south of Port Sudan. They've reached the outer edge of their calculated safe corridor. Beyond this lies Yemeni airspace, where Iranian-supplied radars and SAM sites await them. The four fighters split into two pairs, each turning to bracket the rendezvous point from opposed angles, a standard offset pattern in case of ambush or mechanical failures. At 02:43 hours, the first KC-707 Ra'am tanker appears on the radar scope, holding steady at 24,000 feet over a designated box codenamed Syrup 6. The boom operator has been pre-briefed to expect a 4-ship configuration, but no comms check unless absolutely necessary. It's time to top off before heading in. The lead Ra'am pilot signals his intention by rocking his wings once, then slides into position. From below, the large gray tanker casts a long shadow under the starlight, the fueling boom already extended and stabilized by active control fins. As he connects, the boom operator makes one trim adjustment, guiding the probe into the receptacle above the cockpit with a metallic thunk. Each Ra'am takes on fuel in under 3 minutes, sucking down enough to give them a 1,600 kilometer combat radius with their full weapons load. Below them, the Red Sea is calm, but across the water, somewhere beyond the horizon, early warning radars are now spinning up. The KC-707 Ra'am is Israel's primary strategic aerial refueling platform that is adapted from the Boeing 707 airframe and heavily modified with Israeli systems. Its high-flow boom delivery system allows refueling of fast jets like the F-15I in under 3 minutes, transferring up to 2,500 gallons per pass. Looking at the boom assembly, you'll notice active stabilizers on both fins, keeping the nozzle aligned even in rough conditions. Internally, the REM has Israel-built avionics for encrypted mission coordination and tank management, with override options for fuel prioritization. The dorsal fuselage houses line-of-sight data links for secure mid-air updates. Despite its age, the REM remains a lifeline for long-range strike aircraft, especially when forward basing is politically or tactically impossible. For this mission, the REM's rapid refueling and long on-station time ensured the Ra'am flight could proceed straight to the target. Without this mid-route top-off, the F-15Is would have either required forward basing, a major diplomatic risk, or gone in with a reduced payload. And with where they're going, they'll need all the bombs they can possibly carry. At 02:53 hours, 220 kilometers off the coast of Yemen, the first electronic spike lights up on the Ra'am's radar warning receiver. First, it comes in as short pulses, then intermittent sweeps, and soon, there's no doubt, enemy radars are spinning up. Their classified signals library tells them it is a Soviet-origin spoon rest radar, provided courtesy of Iran and operated by Houthi crews. The F-15Is stay on course, but drop 1,000 feet to re-enter the radar's shadow zone. 10 seconds later, a second radar comes online with longer duration, fan sweep-type patterns. That's a search radar and likely a P-19 or potentially a YLC-6M, indicating a coordinated multi-node air defense network just activated over Sanaa. This means they're definitely in the right place. Inside the cockpit, the pilot reaches left and toggles a rotary selector, activating the EL-L8222 self-protection jammer. Mounted on the centerline pylon, the pod hums to life, sending bursts of energy right across each radar's frequency band. From the ground, radar operators see nothing unusual. No incoming blip, no track, just a slight bloom of static across their screens. The second Ra'am, running in trail, activates its pod 3 seconds later. Their 8 222 pods coordinate via data link, creating staggered pulse envelopes that spoof distance, heading, and altitude. Even if the Houthis start shooting at them, they'll just be firing at ghosts. At 03:01 hours, a third radar, likely a fire control one based on its frequency, briefly acquires and then drops contact. The system never achieves a full lock, but it's just enough to raise the pucker factor a bit. Thankfully, their jammers are doing exactly what they were designed to do. The ELTA EL-L8222, known as an 8222, is Israel's premier airborne electronic countermeasure pod, designed to confuse, spoof, and suppress modern radar systems without exposing the host aircraft to detection. Housed here on either the centerline or wing-mounted pylon, the pod contains an electric warfare suite that detects radar emissions in real time and emits tailored jamming pulses back at the source. Unlike broad-spectrum jammers, the 8222 uses digital radar frequency memory techniques to record incoming signals, alter their timing or frequency, and rebroadcast them in ways that confuse the enemy radar about range and bearing. The pod can do this up to 16 times at once and do it across multiple frequency bands. Its integration with the aircraft's mission computer makes it especially lethal here. In this case, the Ra'am's onboard EW system feeds target classifications into the pod, allowing it to execute precise spoofing sequences without pilot micromanagement, a critical feature for what is about to happen next. At 03:06 hours, the F-15s crest a low ridge 18 kilometers northwest of Sanaa. From this point forward, terrain masking is impossible. They're fully exposed on radar. The pilots throttle up to 480 knots and maintain an altitude of 2,000 feet, praying there isn't a guy with a man-pads nearby. As the pilots close with the target, the black outline of Sanaa emerges on the horizon. In their helmets, the HUD display combines with precise targeting overlays of Sanaa International Airport. Satellite imagery from just 12 hours prior had confirmed the presence of 6 Shahed 136 drone transports, 4 mobile radar units, and a suspected command post operating in the airport. But not for much longer. Inside the lead cockpit, the pilot's breathing becomes measured as adrenaline kicks in. The aircraft vibrates slightly at this speed, but the targeting systems compensate, making a rock-solid lock despite the turbulence. Every Ra'am carries 4 Rampage missiles, mounted here on reinforced underwing pylons. Their sleek angular bodies barely visible through the HUD's peripheral view. In the back of each F-15, the weapons officer punches coordinates through the fire control system. No adjustments are needed. The missiles feed off preloaded GPS with encrypted inertial backup. At 0307, as the formation is 20 kilometers from the airport and closing, the flight lead calls what everyone has been waiting for: weapons free. A half-second later, the first Rampage leaves the rails quickly, followed by 7 more. As each Rampage drops off the rails, there is a momentary pause before its booster ignites. The sudden acceleration pushes the missile forward in a bright flash of light as it banks slightly northeast toward each pre-programmed target. Within 6 seconds, all 4 Ra'am pilots have ripple-fired their first salvo. 8 missiles total, now racing ahead at Mach 1.5. The time on target will be near simultaneous. The formation maintains course for 28 seconds despite their instruments showing active radar sweeps coming online from 3 separate nodes east of their position. At 0308, the first impact registers on the fuel depot. 3 seconds later, a maintenance hangar detonates, followed by the primary drone storage facility and the command building. Secondary explosions bloom across the airfield as the pilots bank hard south, radar warning receivers now screaming with fire control warnings. The Rampage missiles these jets just fired are a standoff precision air-to-ground missile developed jointly by Israel Aerospace Industries and Israel Military Industries. Designed for deep penetration attacks on non-stealth platforms, it leverages sheer speed and smart flight profiles to beat modern air defenses. Measuring approximately 4.7 meters in length and launched from standard fighter pylons, it cruises at Mach 1.5 and boasts a range of over 145 kilometers. There's no terminal seeker. Instead, the Rampage is programmed with precise target coordinates ahead of time. The warhead, designed for hardened targets, can penetrate bunkers, fuel depots, or reinforced hangars. The Rampage's velocity and passive guidance allowed it to strike the first 4 high-value targets before Houthi air defenses even knew they were under attack. Without that speed, radar activation at 0306 would have enabled fire control queuing within minutes, resulting in the probable loss of at least 1 aircraft. The absence of terminal emissions also denied defenders a last-minute IR lock. But unfortunately for the Israelis, the Houthis still had a little more time. After making their first pass, the formation splits hard to port and starboard. As the F-15s come about for another pass, the remaining targets line up in their visors. Now in a free-for-all, each pilot tries to squeeze off their missiles first. No one wants to come back with any missiles left. At 0310 hours, with every target knocked out and the airport now a parking lot, the F-15s execute a maximum performance climb, pushing 60 degrees nose high at full power. While climbing to 12,000 feet, the threat warning system erupts with tones. SA-6 acquisition radars have them in their sights. Missile launch bearing 278, screams the trailing pilot as the formation continues pushing upward. 2 signatures, confirmed SA-6 gainfuls, rise from the Al-Dailami airbase, their exhaust trails visible even at this distance. The Ra'am flight immediately dumps chaff and executes a defensive split, with aircraft separating to complicate targeting solutions. There's no time to go low. Their only way out is up. The lead pilot's forehead beads with sweat despite the cabin cooling as he pushes the throttle firmly into afterburner. The sudden thrust surge slams him back, his oxygen mask pressing tight against his face. His display shows real-time data processing of the threats. 2 missiles, 32 kilometers behind, closing at Mach 2.5. With that closure rate, it'll take about 39 seconds for the missiles to reach them, but take 38 seconds to get the SA-6's max altitude. The formation crosses the coastline at 0315, but the missiles keep tracking. However, now near their max range and without a good radar lock, their guidance becomes erratic. The Houthi gunners, desperate for a hit, pass them the ghost tracks from earlier. At the last second, the missiles make an abrupt turn to the north and explode harmlessly several kilometers behind the trailing aircraft. Thankfully, none of the F-15s suffered damage, but the same could not be said about their flight suits. Bye for now.